Hi, I'm Sophie Summers and welcome to the Crossdressing Lifestyle channel. Or should I say, welcome to my whistle-stop tour of 33 of my personal favourite clubs, bars and restaurants here in Brighton to visit, Brighton and Hove technically, to visit when out dressed. Now, as you may or may not know, Brighton is an extremely colourful and a vibrant city where going out dressed is not an issue whatsoever. So there are, although I've chosen 33, there are probably literally hundreds of places you can go and feel secure and safe in with no problems whatsoever. But I thought I would put this little clippets together for you to have a little look at yourself at some of these venues. So hopefully when you do pop along, you've got some idea of what they may be like. So I'm going to start by obviously walking out my front door, up my little hill here and onto the Western Road to visit Paris House. Now Paris House is the nearest venue that I sort of pop into from time to time for a quick drink. It always has some form of entertainment or some form of live entertainment, music wise, whether it be our wonderful Marilyn de Sax playing or whether it's a blues or reggae bands even playing there. So it's quite a nice little setting. The clientele are very eclectic and very mixed, and you're always going to get a nice little warm welcome there. The food is good and they have an extensive wine list there as well, if that's what you're looking for. So it's a nice place to go in the winter months because literally just around the corner from myself. Now when I pop out of there and turn right a little bit further along Western Road, we come to what I would consider to be one of only two lesbian bars still in survival, still in existence here in Brighton. That is Velvet Jack's. Now Velvet's is run by a lovely couple, always very welcoming. It's a very small venue. It's sort of got an alcove feeling about it. They used to do pizzas, I don't know whether they still do, but you get quite a nice little reception in there and there's always something going on, and from time to time, particularly over the weekends, there may be a little bit of an act in there as well. Somebody's singing, but you will always get a good welcome there as well. It's not a bad little place to start. Now, popping on from Velvet Jack's, we're getting into more of the more established and well-known sort of pubs and bars in the Hove area. The first one is obviously going to be the Grosvenor. Now the Grosvenor definitely has that little sort of front living room feeling about it. It is quite small. They do have quite a few drag acts in there during the week, and it is a very sort of regulars pub, but it's quite nice. The clientele are extremely relaxed in there, and you can always find somebody to talk to who will tell you the deep dark history of Brighton at no extra cost. So you will bump into quite a few nice little personalities, and it shares very near it a place called the Bedford Tavern, which looks like an old, I say, Tudor building. It's quite large inside, really good for your Sunday lunches, that's for sure. And again, like nearly every bar or club here in the area, they have drag acts on a fairly irregular basis. And you will see some of Brighton's more famous drag acts in these particular establishments. I quite like this one for its Sunday relaxed in sort of open fireplace, and they do an awful lot of work for local charities. So at certain times of the year they close the area off, and it's very difficult to get into the pub because it's so crowded. Now we need to move along a little bit further here. Walking along the seafront, you can actually get access quite easily to Regency Square, and tucked in the back of Regency Square is, I think it's called the Regency Tavern. Now this is quite a nice, comfortable, sort of has that warm, wintry feeling type of establishment. Again, has lots of locals around it. It's got quite a nice little upper sort of comfort vibe about it. You can sit down and you can quite easily get lost in the surroundings in there. I pop in there maybe once or twice a year, not so much these days because there are so many other bars to visit, but it's still a nice one if you're in that part of town. So that's really most of the little bars around my local sort of area here in Hove. I've got to walk a little bit further along into town, and the first place I'm going to visit really is somewhere that I really do like to eat, and it's called the Coal Shed, and I can highly recommend it for its steak. It's not the cheapest place to eat, but the quality of the food is great. The atmosphere and the ambience is quite nice, and the staff in there are very accommodating indeed. They certainly know how to present and cook their food, so you're going to have quite a relaxed time in there. The menu is quite extensive as well. Moving out of Regency, the coal shed, I do apologise. We then move on to two of the probably more well-known chain names. They are Browns. There's Browns, the restaurant, and this is somewhere where I go quite often for a quick afternoon tea. It's fairly cheap, it's got lovely surroundings, it's well located. The staff are so attentive and very funny most of the time, and you get a really nice, I suppose, eclectic group of people actually eating there. A lot of them are the local shoppers that are around the lanes. But every now and again you do get some, how would I say, very odd people in there, very flamboyant, probably about the best way. So keep your eye out for a couple of local characters that do go in there quite regularly. Now, if you want to extend your evening, you can pop next door to the Browns, and I suppose I would call it its little miniature bar. It's got a little sort of cocktail bar just about 10 metres around the corner. Quite elegant. They've got a nice little VIP room in there, and it's got a very plush setting in there. You do get a lot of people going in there during the day because it's open quite early in the day, and it's always a nice place to start your evening off. Now, one of my favourite eateries is the Ivy. Now, I've recently done a video of Gloria and I being in the Ivy and having our evening meal in there. You can see it is a very plush, lovely setting. You do get a lot of people in there. It is very, very busy, and it goes on to around about midnight. I think it is when the last people are sort of like filtering out of there, so you have to book early to get the tables. But I think if you're in Brighton and you want that a little bit of an extra experience, a little bit of plushness, then book a table at the Ivy, and I can highly recommend. Sounds a bit odd this, but the toilets are Instagrammable. It's a beautiful settings in there, and they have paid an awful lot of attention to the surroundings. The food also is extremely good, and surprisingly not that expensive. So I definitely put that on my list of places to eat along with the coal shed. Moving on a little further along the road, I generally pop out the Ivy and then waddle along to one of two places. The first one you come to is the Cricketers. Now, this is quite an old-fashioned, laid-back pub, a traditional sort of country pub really. It's got a lot of history about it, and it has a very lively and loud crowd that generally spills on during this, spills over in the summer to outside the streets, because the pub itself isn't that particularly large. It's a middle-aged sort of crowd, I would say. Average sort of people in there are 25 to about 50, something like that, and it's always lively in there, and you will always get a lot of banter as well. Along the banter line is just a little bit further along to probably one of Brighton's more popular sort of, I would call it mainly a sort of club come bar, which is the Mesmerist. Now, the Mesmerist is always packed, always lively, particularly at the weekend with DJs. There is a top terraced bar that's open as well, and during the summer it's a great place to be, to sort of look down on the surrounding town and watch the people walk by. It's very, very lively. The crowd are pretty young, very easy going, and you can always be guaranteed to get lots of conversation and lots of interesting scenery in there as well. The people I find in there are quite funny. So moving on from the Mesmerist, you're going to have to take a little bit of a walk through the central part of town, through a couple of little alleys, until you get to what I would consider to be the gay capital area of Brighton, right by the pier, which is referred to as Kemp Town. The first place I've come to on my particular little walking tour here is the Revenge nightclub. It's quite a famous nightclub over several stories. It has an awful lot of famous bands have appeared there over the years. It's very, very well patronised during the weekends. There are lots of big drag acts, and lots of people visit during the summer for sure. It's always packed out. It doesn't get going until probably 11, 12 o'clock, but it's always full at the weekends. It's a youngish crowd. and it's quite lively. I quite like going there when they have some of the more specialist acts. I think later in the year Dita Von Teese is going to be turning up there, but any and all of the famous drag queens from RuPaul's Race have literally all appeared there at some time or another. So that's quite a nice little haunt, and you need to keep an eye on their website for who's appearing at any time you may be visiting. Now, moving around the corner, we're going to take a little bit of a shortcut up the alley here, and until we come to what I would consider some of the lesser known places. One of them is the Plotting Parlour. Now, this is one of the many Brighton cocktail bars that are about. It's sort of set back a little bit, it's quite quirky, and they've got quite a nice extensive list of cocktails in there. Again, it's a fairly low, what I would call low pace sort of bar, where you can sort of sit and relax and watch the world go by and slowly work your way into oblivion with all the cocktails in there. Quite a nice meeting sort of point, and there are several nice little venues just on this particular corner, because you don't have to walk far from the Plotting Bar until you come to Bar Broadway. Now, Bar Broadway has got itself a bit of a reputation as being the place to be, particularly during the Eurovision Song Contest, because they make a real big, I suppose, real big event out of it, really. It's quite a nice large bar. I think at times I'm surprised at the lack of numbers that turn up in there, because it's quite a nice little venue. It's well laid out, it's quite spacious, and I think it deserves a little bit more patronage than it gets, but it's certainly worth popping into. Now, above Bar Broadway is somewhere that's just literally opened in the last couple of months, and it's called Studio. Now, I've only been there the once. It's up the stairs, it's quite narrow, it's quite quirky, and there are a young team promoting it. So I think they're working very hard to establish its identity, and from the couple of times that I've been there, they've sort of tried very hard with drag acts and entertainment. So I think it's one for the future rather than now, but certainly if you're in Broadway and you want a little bit of a change, why not just pop upstairs? So from there, literally just across the street, is somewhere that's becoming, or fast becoming, my favourite place to visit. It's very quiet. It's the Nautilus Lounge, or the Nautilus Bar. It's downstairs. It used to be called Sublime. It's a table service cocktail bar. Obviously it does the usual sort of beers and shorts, but it specialises in cocktails. It's got a lovely ambience about it, really lovely place to sit and be served. A couple of times I've been there, it's been just the right amount of people, enough to give it atmosphere and sort of a feeling of individualism and plushness, and I suppose a little bit upper market would be a fine way of putting it. It's a great place to start your evening or finish the evening and just be able to relax with a couple of friends. Now, this is when it starts to get a little bit hectic, because we are technically moving into the main spine of Kemp Town, which is St James Street. And on St James Street, there are lots of bars that you can visit. The first one is the Affinity Bar, and I always say this is a little bit like a New York sort of loft type bar, very well laid out. It's quite narrow, quite small, but it's presented very well. Now, when I used to go in there, they have a lot of karaoke type of evenings, and it was quite boisterous, but now I believe it's actually got that little bit quieter, a little bit more select. So it's another nice little place to start. As with all of the places we looked at the moment, they're not big establishments. They're sort of 50 to maybe 80 type of people, and you feel quite nice in there. I think the Affinity Bar has been open for a couple of years now. It is a location that's changed hands many times. Some people may know it as Priscilla's or the Poison Ivy, but they've done a substantial revamp in there, and I think it's quite plush. They do have a drag evenings, and the bar staff are incredibly knowledgeable about their drinks. So that's a bonus if you are somebody that's very choosy about what you drink. Going out of that particular area there, once you get from the Affinity, again, I do like to my little bits of food. Just a little bit further up the road, or up St James Street, is a themed restaurant. It's called Golden Girl, and it's themed on Peaky Blinders. So all the staff in there have their little flat caps, and the food, well, it doesn't necessarily reflect that particular time, but the atmosphere in there is quite good. The value for money, I think, is very good. And if you're looking for somewhere a little bit different to eat with a little bit of its own character about it, then the Golden Girl is quite a nice little restaurant. Do look up its availability and its opening times though, because I have been a couple of times thinking I can pop in, but it was actually closed. It only opens from about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. So be wary of that, sort of plan a little bit ahead. Now, out of going from a Golden Girls, you will probably come to one of the more famous places in Brighton, and it is the Queen's Arms. Now, the Queen's Arms has its own unique atmosphere. It's probably best known for its drag acts. It has entertainment after entertainment after entertainment. It has a lot of acts on. It's quite a friendly sort of place. It is sort of more hen party-ish these days at the weekends. It's somewhere you would go if you want to be in a bigger crowd and be slightly hyped up. It's a good sort of starting or middle ground sort of place to start your evening off in Brighton. You will certainly bump into a lot of people in there having a good time, and they will try and involve you in the entertainment as well, which is a bit of fun. I've been there many, many times over the years, seen some fantastic acts and had some hilarious times, meeting some wonderful characters, I must say. Now, from the Queen's, it's again out and turning left up the hill to probably some of the more well-established establishments here in Brighton. The first one being a Marine Tavern. Again, it's a very small sort of town type of pub, very relaxed, quite old sort of setting inside, very slow, and it's a bit of a step back in time. The crowd in there are very knowledgeable of what's going on in Brighton, and it's always a nice relaxed place to go. So if you're looking for a slightly calmer sort of evening, well, that's a nice little place to sit down, gather your thoughts before you move on to possibly some of the more outlandish venues in Brighton. The first one that comes to mind to me as being slightly more outlandish is, of course, the institution that is the Bulldog. Now, the Bulldog has been around since probably Adam and Eve. It's been around forever, I think. It used to be a brewery. It's one of the more famous places in Brighton for your cheap drinks, good entertainment, crazy staff who always know how to make you laugh, always attentive, and it's always a good place to be. It's one place that I always go if I want cheering up, because you will always sit down, talk to anybody, and everybody will come over to you. As I say, the drinks are fairly cheap. The entertainment is non-stop, literally non-stop until the early hours of the morning. Very much like the old vaudeville, they will carry on for as long as you're listening. So that's always what I call the spit and sawdust end, but people in there have huge hearts and massive big senses of humour as well. I would definitely put that on my list of places to visit. Now we're going to move on from there to probably a place that's a little bit up and down. It's just along the road a little bit further. It's called the Zone. Now the Zone has recently had a refit, so it looks quite nice inside. The crowd are regulars, the more discerning sort of people would pop into there. They seem to be full of locals that have seen it all, watched it all, and seen some of the best and the worst drag acts ever. So I'm not too sure about quite what to say to compliment the Zone. It is definitely worth going into. The bar staff in there are making a big effort to draw people in and provide good entertainment at reasonable costs. But you will always get a warm welcome in there, as you do in all of the bars here in Brighton. Now, an up and coming one is just around the corner. It's called The Village, or La Village, to give it its full name. It's going to be going through a slight renovation at the time of publishing this particular video, but the plans are pretty grandiose there from the new management. The management previously were involved in the Queen's, and it built up their reputation over the last couple of years, bringing in some of the great acts. So I have a lot of faith that that will be a place to visit slightly later on, maybe towards Christmas and in the new year when it's got itself established. But it's quite a nice little venue. They do food in there and they're very, very welcoming. I do like the bar staff there. They've always got time to sit down and talk to you no matter how busy they are. Been in there quite a few times. Friday nights and Saturday nights generally have some sort of music on, and they're doing their best to alternate the entertainment. So again, from there, I'm getting tired out just talking about it and walking it. Next place I would visit is the Thai restaurant. Now, I always have troubles pronouncing this. I was what I call it Sawadee. So forgive me if I pronounce that wrong, but it's a Thai restaurant at the top of the hill. It's a lovely place to sit and eat, even quite late at night time. The food is always glorious. The staff are very attentive, and it's always somewhere nice to sit down, chill out, get something to eat. So once you've had your fill of Thai food, you can just walk down the hill and go to the Camelford Arms, which has a little soft spot in my heart. I love the place, particularly in the winter for its open fireplace and to die for chandelier. It has that campness about it where I think you'd have to be well over the top before anybody took a strange look at you there. It's got a great crowd of people. It does an awful lot of work for charity. As they say, it raises a lot of money for Sussex Beacon and the HIV charities. But you do get great food in there, a very, very competitive quiz night. I've been there a few times and it's cool. I've never seen quiz nights so competitive, but it's always a good fun and some really obscure questions you would get in there. I do like the food in there, I like the atmosphere, and particularly during the winter, it's the sort of place that you feel like you want to snuggle into the chairs there and stay there all day long. So it's a big plus for the Camelford Arms. For me, if you want more of a quieter sort of evening. Now, if you want to up the tempo a bit, just go out the door, turn left, and you get to the seafront and probably Brighton's best known gay club, which is Legends. Now, as the name states, it is a bit of a legend here. It's got a very nice bar at the top and a nightclub downstairs that you can dance the evening and the early mornings away until around about 4 o'clock in the morning, I think, is the last straw there. As I say, it's where most people gravitate towards during the end of an evening. You will always find a great crowd of people in there. It's quite entertaining. The music is very good. These days, I believe the club is only currently open on a Friday and Saturday night. Fingers crossed as we enter the new year and things pick up a bit more. The club will open again during the week, as I say, fingers crossed. Now, the seafront area here, as you walk out of the club and down the hill, there are quite a few interesting places. The first one that we generally come to is a place called Funky Fish. Now, at the time of doing this video and speaking to the management there, they are not, unfortunately, opening the club until next year, which is 2022, which is a bit of a shame because that is one heck of a club on a Friday night. It used to be a free night, it's a big club, and they used to do 70s and 80s music, and it's just like stepping back in time music-wise. But it's a big, friendly sort of club that used to have a lot of people going to it, particularly on a Friday and a Saturday evening. So I'm looking forward, fingers crossed again, God willing, that in 2022 it will open again and we can have some more great evenings in there. It's really opening now as purely as a hotel. So I would keep an eye out for that one. Just look on its website and look for local news in G-Scene maybe. They might be able to tell you from that particular magazine and what's going on in the Funky Fish and other areas. Now, a very, how would I say, unusual little restaurant is called the WitchEZ, which is sort of at a basement level. It's run by some very young and enthusiastic people towards food. You never quite know what's going to be on the menu, but you can guarantee it's going to be worldwide. I've had a few meals in there and I've never ever been disappointed. The food is great, the atmosphere is fantastic, somewhat strange, but very, very good atmosphere about it. The waitresses and the staff in there are very knowledgeable about their food, but also very attentive as well. And I quite like to pop in there when we have a small crowd. You do have to book up quite in advance as well, and it's not easy getting a table or even getting somebody to answer the phone, but it's worth the patience, believe me. Now, moving on a little bit further down the hill, we come to another sort of staple place to visit, which is the Amsterdam. The Amsterdam, like Legends, has its own hotel establishment with it. It's got a nice bar. It does an awful lot of entertainment, it does its food. Again, it's got a very nice open patio area at the front, which is always highly sort of sought after area to sit out and promenade during the warmer summer evenings. So if it is a bit warm when you come down, make sure you get there nice and early. Food is pretty good, the beers are pretty good as well, and the general atmosphere there is not bad. Actually, if you're feeling a little bit brave, right next to, and I mean literally adjoined to Amsterdam, is a freaky little club, but you've really got to be quite, how much I say, confident to be able to go amongst that sort of crowd there. They're a very young crowd. So I would kind of give that a little bit of a miss, but that's where a lot of the noise comes from late on a Saturday night. If you're in the Amsterdam, you can't work out where the noise is coming from. Now a little bit further down the hill is Charles Street, right by the bus stop. This is Charles Street, and the tap there is a huge sort of pub. It's got a nice atmosphere in there. There's all sorts of crazy drag competitions and venues, includes sort of drag bingo. It has a constant stream of music coming out to there. There's good food in there during the day as well. It's got a fairly young crowd as well. Always up for a laugh, always wanting to drag you into the conversation and be part of their team in a very positive way. So I quite like that one, and it's really good for the younger crowd. Finally, or nearly finally, we come almost back on ourselves with the Revenge the Bar. We started off looking at Revenge the Club, but there is a bar there. It's called Revenge, and it's a younger type of bar, probably average age in there between maybe 20 and about 35. It's always lively, particularly at the weekends, because it's a sort of pre-club bar, and it gets quite full up to about 10:30, 11 o'clock, when then everybody goes around the corner, obviously, to the nightclub. So that's the kind of whistle-stop tour, but those of you that are counting on your fingers may have only noticed 31. I've missed 2 out deliberately because I wanted to give them a little bit of a special mention. One of them is, and it used to be formerly called the Malborough. Now, the Malborough is very famous right opposite the pavilion as being well, it's a lady bar, so it's a girly bar, but it also has a big sort of theatre up top that in the same building. There's lots of sort of small plays, and it did have its own unique sort of atmosphere there. Now it closed fairly recently, which is quite sad. However, out of the ashes, as they say, has risen a renovated place. It's called the Actor. It's just been completely renovated out, and I quite like it. I paid it a very short visit the other day. I like the way it's set out. It's very snugly put together, well lit. The prices are very good as well, and I think it'd be quite a nice little meeting point. So I am personally grateful that that particular venue is back online again, and hopefully it's going to have a good future. The last one was an eatery. I always loved visiting Bon Appetito in St James Street. Whenever I was going out in the evenings, I would always call in there, but unfortunately it's closed down, that particular branch. Still got one here in Hove, which I still like to visit, or Haywards Heath, but my new favourite Italian in that area is a place called La Capannia, which is just around the corner. Lovely staff, excellent food, well priced, and well worth a visit if you want to start your evening off with a nice little high value, well cooked meal. So that is my whistle-stop tour of some 33 venues, which include bars, clubs and restaurants here in Brighton. I hope that was helpful to some of you. Please feel free to drop some notes down below. If there's somewhere else that you really like to visit, then please let me know and I will pop in there as well. But for now, all I have to do is to say thank you very, very much for watching. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. It'd be highly appreciated. And until the next time, please stay safe, stay well and stay gorgeous. So, bye-bye.